Well, the purpose of bringing visiting scholars and our new faculty with us on this program was so that you would have an opportunity to meet Ken, to meet Jeff, and to learn from Drs. Alfer and Grimes how to put together such a program. But one of the things that I wanted all of you to hear as well were some of the obstacles that they encountered as they thought of this idea in the first place. The fact that they didn't give up, they persevered, they found ways to get support to develop what was an innovative and creative learning experience for students. Our goal is that you'll learn from them, you'll be inspired by them, encouraged by them, and at your own campuses you'll think about opportunities that you may want to develop for your own students. Some of you are already thinking of some programs, and others of you, our hope is that we're planting seeds, and it may not be next year, it may be 5 years, but that you will look toward creating experiential learning opportunities for the students that you'll encounter in the future. And you will have had the opportunity to meet some of those who've blazed the trail and can help you learn how to do it and do it well.
It happens once a year each spring. Mountain View College students pack a bag and board a plane to take part in the annual American Studies excursion to Boston. The purpose of the excursion is to discover the places important to some of the defining values and events in American literature and history. Upon arrival, they convene for lunch at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum.
Those of you who are looking around and seeing,
staff at the library explain the origin and purpose of presidential libraries and share rare glimpses at copies of some of the most significant documents of the Kennedy era.
National security files, an enormous chunk of material, because so much was happening in Germany. It was an incredible worry spot. Berlin was still divided, the country itself was still divided, there were two separate crises over Berlin. So,
Displays throughout the museum include letters and documents from the Black Civil Rights Movement, treasures ranging from ancient Egyptian artifacts to a segment of the Berlin Wall, gifts to the United States from leaders around the world, relics of the Kennedy White House,
that every nation know,
and highlights of the JFK presidency.
well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
flexibility so that, in fact, this
Surprisingly,
is one of the most
95% of the papers of the 20th century American writer Ernest Hemingway are housed at the Presidential Museum and Library. Students and staff join international scholars in reviewing copies of selected manuscripts of the American writer in the Hemingway Reading Room, surrounded by first editions of his works and some of the author's most cherished mementos.
This is a whole sheaf of notes that F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote about Farewell to Arms. And Fitzgerald read a lot of Hemingway's early things in manuscript and in galley and gave comments on them, sometimes extremely astute comments. But by the time Hemingway had finished Farewell to Arms, he was less than enthusiastic about Fitzgerald's comments. So I'm going to give you the last page here, just leave it open to the last page of Fitzgerald's comments, at the bottom of which Hemingway has written his own comment on Fitzgerald's comments and circled it.
Oh my God!
The second day begins with an early rise and a short 30-minute drive from our lodgings to Walden Pond, made famous by the 2-year, 2-month, and 2-day experiment in living conducted in a little one-room cabin built there by Henry David Thoreau, a Concord, Massachusetts citizen, writer, naturalist, teacher, and philosopher. From 1845 to 1847, the young sojourner lived in his cabin and farmed the acreage just behind, earning just enough money to cover his expenses, while he recorded minute daily encounters with the animals and plant life in changing seasons, observations on the human condition and responsibilities, and the importance of addressing social injustices. "150 years later and more, Thoreau's Walden has become one of the most beloved works of the whole American Romantic period, a testimony to the well-lived life."
All that. Okay. Now imagine yourself back here on that morning. Paul Revere has been, along with Charles Dawes, has been dispatched from Boston, which is that away, okay, and tomorrow night will be at the beginning of this trip. They were messengers.
At lunch, staff guide the excursionist around the Green at Lexington, the site of the first skirmish between the American colonial Minutemen and the British troops set out from Boston before sunrise on the morning of April 19, 1775, to seize stores of colonial arms and munitions reported to be housed near Concord.
So, as again we move down the Green, for what they believed, this was the line of fire. The militia pulled back a little bit. The British commander Pitcairn was saying, "Disperse, disperse," and they pulled back a little bit, and they didn't disperse though. So you have the advance coming. The militia are falling back. Come on, fall back.
We travel the Minuteman Freedom Trail back to Concord to the site of the second encounter, where American colonials first returned fire across the Concord River at the North Bridge, where hardly more than a stone's throw away, the family of William Emerson watched the proceedings from the upstairs windows of the old manse. One of the 3 homes toured on the excursion, the old manse would later become the home of the world-famous American philosopher and transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson, where, in an upstairs study, he began the composition of Nature, the essay that brought him international attention among the most gifted thinkers of both the United States and Europe. It was the same small room where, less than a decade later, Nathaniel Hawthorne would compose some of his most important short stories. The afternoon closes with a quiet and pensive trip to Author's Ridge in Concord's Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, where lie buried the bodies of Henry David Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Louisa May Alcott, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. In the peaceful surroundings of the cemetery, the group reflects on its first day. One of several times, students and staff will share interpretations and reactions to their experiences.
Really pretty and significant for the whole history of the world. People have lived so many, you see all these graves, so many people have lived before us.
You learn all this stuff in the books, and it's just on a page, and it's just words, but to come here and to hear a story, and to walk where they walked, and breathe where they, and to just really soak it all in was really neat. Being on the Green, and being at the Old North Bridge, and seeing the graves, and that it's not just a word anymore, it's something I can understand, and something I can feel, and to look at and go, I can make a difference, and I can be more, and I really enjoyed that.
I remember John Kennedy's words about that a man can die, but the idea lives. And although our life is so short, and it can be just one human being, and that human being lives not long, like 44 years, and then dies, but his ideas will live forever. And like Henry Thoreau, he was already dead, but people still come to his grave, and people still read his books. And it means that it doesn't matter that we just have that limited period of time. We can still do a lot, and our actions can influence the whole history of the world.
Okay, month and the day.
I want to know!
I've only had 2 hours of sleep and she's gonna start screaming at me.
From our lodgings on the third day, the group boards the Boston T, a train and subway route that takes us to Cambridge and Harvard University. A quick tour of the campus and lunch in Harvard Square gives the group an opportunity for relaxation and a chance to explore the country's oldest college campus.
Down this street a little ways where it says Coop. That's your all-purpose sweatshirt, souvenir, whatever part of the store. And I might not get back.
Rubbing the left toe of John Harvard's statue guarantees good luck on the next exam. After lunch, the Sojourners board the T for a brief ride to Boston Commons, where we meet a member of the National Park Service who guides the group through the Black Heritage Trail.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ryan. You're going to be taking the Black Heritage Trail walking tour with me. We're part of Boston African American National Historic Site here. This is the statue to Robert Gould Shaw and the men of the 54th Regiment. As you can tell, they're soldiers. These are soldiers in the Civil War. Has anyone seen the movie Glory?
Yes.
Okay, that's these guys. All right. This is the first black soldiers from the North to fight against the South in the Civil War. Okay? And it took 2 years of pressure on Abraham Lincoln from abolitionists like Frederick Douglass, like the folks here in Boston, for him to finally allow the black soldiers to be allowed to fight.
This 2-hour walking tour exposes both students and staff to some of the darkest days of American history and the bravery of the Boston Free Black community in its service to runaway slaves escaping to the north on the Underground Railroad.
Okay, if you get down here, you can just basically disappear. All right? Also, there's a little neighborhood we're going to be walking by as we go through here that you can't even see from the street. You can get back there and go hide in someone's home really quick. You've got a good chance of not getting caught. The other thing I like to think about too, as we look at this alley, is if you can imagine, a fugitive slave being chased right down here, slave catcher up there, and just the regular folks. We're walking home from work or school. What do you think we're going to do?
Block the doorway.
We'll block the doorway, right, yeah, or clog this alleyway up, get a couple of us in here. That slave catcher's not going to get through. Would we get hurt? Maybe. Would we go to jail? Maybe. But would it be worth it? Yeah. Because that fugitive slave is going to find his way to freedom. Okay? Now this is a face that you all should know, I would imagine. Harriet Tubman. It's a 9-year-old girl. Her first act of resistance was doing just what I just explained. She stood in a doorway and wouldn't let a slave catcher get his hands on a fugitive slave.
At 9?
At very young girl, like 9 years old. And because of that, he hit her with a brick or a rock or something on her head. And for the rest of her life, she had these dizzy spells. People thought she was talking to God. She'd just faint. But they're tracing it back to that childhood injury she got blocking the doorway. So those acts of resistance like that helped. That made the difference between the seconds that those people needed to get their freedom.
Also, next door is the old burial ground. It's listed here.
A trek back through Downtown Boston, following the American Revolutionary War Freedom Trail, takes the group past cemeteries containing the remains of some of the most famous early colonial leaders and Revolutionary War heroes.
Perhaps see the grave of John Hancock. The Reveres are buried there. The story, the Mother Goose story, whoever that's about, is supposedly buried there. So it has other folks like that. But also James Otis, who is a little-known revolutionary, is also buried there. Otis became famous in 1761.
Quincy Market at Faneuil Hall offers students a wide range of dining options, followed by a continued night stroll through North Boston, past the North Church, from where the American silversmith began his famous ride to warn the colonists that the British were coming.
Who do we fear? Well, they're people, but it's always that power to pick out someone and point the finger, and that's the power of the girls. That's the connection, when they had power for whatever reason, like Jeff was saying, and they knew it. Once they got into it, when you can point a finger at someone and that person is brought before a trial and possibly hanged, that's power.
On July the 19th, 1692, Rebecca Nurse, a 71-year-old matriarch and beloved church member in the small hamlet of Salem Village, 15 miles north of Boston, was led with 4 other members of her community to Gallows Hill, where they were hanged as witches. Students and staff returned to the Nurse homestead to pay respects to the 18 men and women executed in those awful days. The Nurse Home still stands and provides visitors an opportunity to see one of the oldest remaining 17th century structures in New England. The property also features a reconstructed Puritan meeting house, typical of the period, where at least 3 feature-length movies have been filmed. The Nurse and Peabody Cemetery at the rear of the Nurse property contains the remains of George Jacobs, another Salem villager hanged during the witchcraft hysteria. For lunch, the group travels 5 miles south to Salem Town, one of the colony's most important seaports, from where 4-masted sailing vessels set sail and return bearing treasures and merchandise from around the world. The United States Coast Guard's USS Friendship is a new seaworthy ship recently commissioned and represents one of the few of the remaining sailing vessels in the United States fleet.
No time at all. They built this, I think, in 6 months or so for like $6,000. Originally in 1797.
Really?
Because they had a lot of shipyards. But we don't know if she was rigged. She might have just been built and not rigged yet. But it was just such a thriving business. Who built this? Enos Briggs was the guy who built this ship. And he built the frigate Essex, which was the biggest ship ever built here. It was built out on the island.
Down the street from Salem Harbor stands the home of Captain John Turner, better known after Hawthorne immortalized the structure in literature as the House of the Seven Gables. Across the street and down a block is the old U.S. Customs House, where the famous author wrote much of his manuscript for the Scarlet Letter. Visitors can view the small office where Hawthorne worked as a customs clerk. Up and down the harbor, the students shop the nooks and crannies and little craft shops. How was the house?
It was great. We went through that teeny little
Yeah,
stairs.
the best part was the chimney.
I got stuck in it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he hit his head.
Yeah.
He's
He
too
was
tall for
miserable
that
in there.
house.
There seems to be something for just about every taste.
No, she's just going to show us the places that are haunted and then show us the pictures that she's taken that show the ectoplasm and all that stuff.
In the evening, students join the college staff and faculty for a traditional New England feast. The last morning of the Boston excursion finds the group in Plymouth, Massachusetts on the Atlantic coast. It was here on December 26, 1620, that the band of about 100 English separatists, the Pilgrims, in a bold step to secure religious freedom, stepped ashore to establish their first settlement. They had sailed from Plymouth, England, aboard a small packet ship called the Mayflower. Its sister ship, Mayflower II, lies anchored in the harbor, and students work their way through its narrow passages, getting a glimpse of what it must have been like to have stowed away for the 2 months' passage across the stormy North Atlantic that first winter.
Sailed here in 1957, so the captain of the ship in that time did stay here because he could see the whole ocean. But in 1620, there was no need for the captain to see everything because the navigators were the ones steering with their voice. There was no steering wheel until about 100 years after the Pilgrims came across.
The group stops